All right, hey, y'all. So today, on this episode, we're going to talk about the minimum wage and liberal hypocrisy. So stay tuned. All right, so I've been giving some thought to this and talk about the minimum wage, and this is not going to be a discussion about should we have one, is it constitutional, does it hurt our economic system. That's not what this is about. This is about the mind of liberals, and I understand the mind of liberals. I know where they're coming from, and something occurred to me, and I had to go do some fact checking on it, and I was a little surprised at what I found. And what I'm doing here is, it maybe hypocrisy isn't quite the right word for what I'm looking for. Lies, deceit, any of those other kind of words. But isn't it interesting that Democrats, the liberals, like to tear down America and compare us unfavorably to typically countries of Western Europe, the democratic socialist and the socialist countries. You never see them compare us to, say, Cameroon or Indonesia, for example. And it's also interesting that they absolutely despise Western Europe, France, Spain, the UK, the Netherlands, the colonizers, the enslavers. They hate them until, of course, it makes a point that they want to make. But you think about these other issues, universal health care, a free college education for all, more time off, paid family leave for the children. They love to compare America unfavorably to these democratic socialist countries with terrible economies. But on one issue, I realized they never compare America to Europe, and that is on the concept of the minimum wage. So with the current election, that's ongoing, most of the candidates, I think all of them, have come out in support of a $15 minimum wage. Many are talking about a living wage. I've heard some talk about indexing it with inflation so they don't have to actually do their jobs and debate anything. And of course, there's that one guy out there who wants to talk about giving everybody $1,000 just because they're here. But it got me thinking, okay, well, minimum wage is here, they want to raise it, that's great. Beyond the economic impact of it, is it going to give people more spending money or lose a ton of jobs? Why aren't they comparing us to Europe? So I went out, I did a little research. Now, America, it isn't as bad as it looks. Let's put it this way. So America, we have a federal minimum wage of $7.25, I think it is. Yeah, there it is, $7.25 an hour. $7.25. Now, that's a little misleading because there's 29 states and the District of Columbia that have passed laws that have increased that rate above and beyond that. Maybe it's $8.25, $8.50, and several states, I think 19 of them or something like that, have got laws on the books that are going to raise our minimum wage up to $15 an hour by 2024, 2025, something along those lines. But still, how is that really comparing to Europe? So one of the ones people love to compare us to is the UK, the United Kingdom. It works out to be $9.08 an hour. France works out to be $9.50 an hour. It's actually based on a monthly minimum. Germany, same thing, monthly minimum, but it works out to be $9.73 an hour. So right now, yeah, our minimum wage seems to be a little low, but the states are doing what the states have the right to do, and that is increase it. And that's putting us above what these democratic socialist countries are actually doing. For comparison, I looked at our northern neighbor up in Canada, federal minimum wage, $8.50 an hour. Now, I started thinking, well, there's a lot more countries to compare this to. Let's look at a few others. So I did take a look at Sweden, democratic socialist, Valhalla, Italy, and Austria. None of them have a minimum wage. That surprises me, but what happens is it's really complicated and I can't explain it all, but they have such a strong collective bargaining, union-based society that basically the unions control every worker, the unions negotiate a minimum wage, so the government doesn't have to impose it, the unions impose it on the employers that have the union in effect underneath them. So they still have minimum wages that end up being very similar to what the UK and Germany, for example, have. But that means that the democratic argument that for everything else is we need to compare ourselves to Europe, even though we're not Europe and we have a totally different culture, totally different foundation. All of a sudden they get silent on this concept of the minimum wage because they are pushing something beyond what the Europeans are doing. They're pushing something beyond even what these sometimes struggling nations have got. And it's food for thought, because they're lying to us, they're deceiving us, and they're playing the same game they've played for decades. Let me know your thoughts below, and of course, hit the subscribe button.